Good afternoon. Welcome to SBAM's daily briefing. This is daily briefing number 23. It's Friday, April 10th. Good Friday. It's day 18 of Stay Home, Stay Safe, an executive order that has been extended, as you all know. If you're watching now, you are on Zoom. If you're watching us live, or you are on the SBAM Leadership Council Facebook page. Apparently Facebook isn't taking our live feed right now, so if you're watching this later, you'll maybe see it on Facebook. But thanks for joining us, those of you who are here live at the moment. As always, my partner in crime here is Brian Calley, who's once again in his car out by the highway. And Brian, new executive order. It was the big news yesterday. Disappointing news, I think, to a lot of business owners. Extends another 3 weeks to the end of April. What else, and just reaction that you're hearing from members?
Yeah, we tried to broadcast ahead of time what we expected would happen, and it really did fit pretty closely to what we thought was that it would be extended to May 1st, through April 30th at midnight. And we even thought that probably there would be some more restrictions on retail stores. I did actually look through to find out, can I still drive to the freeway and sit in my car and do Zoom meetings? It appears as though it's not explicitly forbidden. So I think I'm okay to do this. I'll let you know. But I might need you to bail me out of jail next week, Rob, if I don't show up for our daily briefing. But
sure that's in the budget, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, all right. And even though as our members, you see us working through these, and we want to be professional, and we want to be very direct about it. But I also want to send a message to our members that doesn't mean that we don't get how difficult this is and how disappointed you are right now. We do understand that, and we're going to start. And part of today's call is going to be about thinking about and how we can influence and be a part of the decisions of the future. So in this stay home order, we covered a few things yesterday. Many of the media reports have covered out or articulated the differences that big retailers, for example, have to implement differences in controls on how people get into the store and how many people can be in the store, what they can sell. So additional tightening restrictions on that. The Homeland Security list, the CISA list, you've heard us talk about this before. It's the governor's executive order references a list that says what are critical infrastructure industries and workers. And that's been updated a few times since the original executive order. This executive order has explicitly said to ignore the updates of Homeland Security and go with what Homeland Security said on March 19th. We're trying to get to the bottom of why that is. It would suggest that for some reason the Homeland Security process is no longer trusted for updates. At least by the state of Michigan. So we really don't understand. We haven't received an explanation yet as to why they've frozen in time the CISA list on March 19th and not allowed for people in Michigan to operate under the constant updates that they are doing with respect to jobs and functions that are critical and necessary to sustain life and safety in Michigan. One other thing that I wanted to point out, because I have not seen it covered anywhere, is that there's a change that seems kind of subtle about supplier designations to critical infrastructure industries and critical infrastructure workers. Before, in the original executive order, it said that if you are a supplier, you needed to have a designation from that critical infrastructure company. They needed to designate you as one of their suppliers, and so you'd have that document in place, and then you're good. This order has removed that documentation between supplier and the critical infrastructure company. So in other words, you would no longer need to have that designation. On the surface, you might think, oh, good. I've got some mixed feelings about this because now what it does is it takes the supplier and it puts them back into that critical infrastructure industry decision matrix. So before, if you were a supplier, well, I've got my documentation, I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about somebody saying, hey, you're not really critical infrastructure because I've got this documentation. Now you need to decide for yourself if you are critical infrastructure or a supplier to critical infrastructure. And that's done completely independent of the person that of the entity that you're selling to. So we're going to have to review some of the guidance that we've been giving and adjust it or update it because of that change.
And Brian, I think we were aware that the original CISA list was updated after the first executive order. And it raised a lot of questions about which list am I supposed to be guided by. So it's interesting that this executive order goes back to the original CISA list, not the updated one. That's a fascinating, and it will matter to some industries, I think.
Yeah, it matters quite a bit. I'll give you an example that in a lot of areas in our state and in other states, landscaping is necessary for pest and mosquito control. And so they had updated it. Just because you make the CISA list doesn't mean you can operate, but you can operate if you're on the list and the work that you do is necessary for sanitary or life-sustaining or life-protecting health and safety reasons, then you can operate. And so the Homeland Security, they put out that first list very, very quickly. So the pandemic was already present here in our country and spreading. And so Homeland Security was really moving quickly to get that first list out. But everybody knew that their first draft was not going to be perfect. And so they'd be updating it. We thought that the reference to the CISA list was a living, breathing reference. We did not realize that it was meant to be frozen in time. The first draft of critical infrastructure that Homeland Security did is what the state of Michigan believes or has taken the position that is the perfect or the most perfect list, and all the things that they updated after that are not necessary or critical for life-sustaining activities. So again, we're trying to understand why that is. It's not, it's puzzling.
All right. Thank you for that update. And again, we try to keep everybody up to speed on our website at sbam.org. Let's turn to the Paycheck Protection Program. We have been just pounding this drum that anybody who hasn't heard of it needs to understand it. Anybody who hasn't applied for it needs to talk to their banker. Actually, today is an important day for a subset of our members because today the window opens for some others. We've been projecting this for a while. What's this? What happens today, and what do we think is going to happen?
Well, according to the original guidance, they said that Paycheck Protection Program loans, these forgivable loans that we've been talking so much about, companies that have regular W-2 wages, those started last Friday, and banks have been coming online all week. In fact, I talked to somebody at PNC just earlier, and they're up and active now. That's been one that had come up a question before. A lot of community banks started straight away issuing approvals too, and credit unions as well. So now things are running. What the original guidance from technically from Treasury or the IRS said that self-employed and sole proprietors, independent contractors, you could start applying for Paycheck Protection Program loans on today, Friday, April 10th. And now just because it's okay with the US government that you can apply doesn't necessarily mean that every bank and credit union is ready for you to apply. But today is the day when it is it is supposed to be available to you. So we would love to hear some feedback. Any of you 1099 contractors, sole proprietors, when you call your bank or credit union and submit an application, we'd like to hear, what are you being told? Today is the day it's supposed to be open.
All right. And again, you know, our goal as an organization is more small businesses from Michigan than any other state apply for and get accepted to the Paycheck Protection Program, because we believe it will be it will have a lot to do with how quickly our state recovers, because how quickly our small businesses recover will really have a lot to do with that. So,
and Rob, an edge. We do need an edge, because as numbers are coming out, it's very, very clear that in the Midwest, Michigan is getting economically and public health both. It is a 1-2 punch in the worst way. We are doing worse than everybody else in the Midwest. And so if you look at the unemployment numbers, Michigan's are absolutely staggering, even as compared to our neighbors that are somewhat similar. So in other words, we have much, much, much higher unemployment filings, and whether you look at it in absolute numbers or on a per capita basis. So we are going to need every single edge that we can get, because clearly Michigan is being hit on the public health front and the economic front harder than anybody in the Midwest.
So as you say, that means it's even more imperative that we accomplish this goal of more Michigan small businesses, you know, applying for and receiving these funds. I did have a conversation last night with my friend who's the president of the Michigan Bankers Association, Rand Painter. He had reached out just to sort of see how we're doing and how, you know, we're doing relative to his constituents, the banks. And he told me an interesting story that he had talked to the smallest of the small banks and the largest of the large banks, and all of them said they originated more loans last week than they did all of last year. That just gives you a sense of the kind of volume that banks are dealing with right now. It's I've heard you say it, Brian, that this is something that was literally invented in the last 30 days. This concept of a paycheck protection program, it didn't even exist, 3 weeks ago, and to have it stood up and operational is a pretty Herculean task. And while we are patient and persistent has been our theme, and we've asked our members to be the same. If we're going to be on mission to have more small businesses participating in this program than any other state, then we can't accept too many excuses. We've got to be serious about getting this done. So that's been our conversation with the Bankers Association and with banks in general. And I think we really need them to be on mission with us to get this done. One other issue, and it's one we've been talking about all along. This is not an issue that's always been in our lane. It's the unemployment insurance. The truth is, as a small business organization, generally speaking, we represent business owners. We represent businesses, and if their former employees are eligible to draw unemployment, it's always been that sort of arm length relationship. It wasn't really our issue to be expert in, but the CARES Act actually made unemployment possible for a whole new set of people. We've been talking about this. Will you give us the update? You've heard a little bit more recently from the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity.
So my original reason for reaching out for the department was to beg them to give me a date. So that was the first order. And I want to say too, just to acknowledge that the incredible volume that department has handled is something where it was going to be frustrating for everybody, but they have processed and approved over 800,000 people for unemployment in the last 3 weeks. That system, the record before and the highest unemployment activity they had before was less than 80,000, fewer than 80,000. So it's really been something that's been, it has overwhelmed the system. Now, that said, we have new people that have been waiting for federal guidance and now waiting on the state to open up the portals for self-employed and 1099 contractors that for the first time ever in Michigan anyway are eligible for unemployment. And my understanding is that about 200,000 have applied but been denied because it was too early. They hadn't programmed the system to even accept those applications yet, and people didn't know, so they applied and they got denied. I was told that it is close. Won't give me a date. I pressed a little more, like, can you give me just, when you say close, are we talking about hours, days, weeks? What does it mean? And I was told very close. So to me, I've been on the government side of this before, and so what I think that means is they think very, very close. But what they're nervous about is, will the system on the first try work the way it's supposed to work? And so they're trying to underpromise and overdeliver on this because it's a difficult situation. But they did tell me something that I want to make sure that anybody who has applied, that you pay really, really close attention to what I'm about to say. If you have applied as a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, 1099 employee, if you've applied and been denied, they are asking you, do not reapply. They are going to go through every one of those denials and run them through the process for approval consideration, and they'll let you know if they don't have everything that they need. So what they're asking is, do not reapply if you've already applied. That will do two things if you do. It'll, first of all, stress the system again, because this 200,000 people will all kind of rush in at the same time, but also it's going to create two files for you, and that could create some errors that delay the decision on you longer. So I know it's going to be hard to trust this, but I don't know what we can do other than trust the advice that they're giving, is that they will look at everyone that has been denied. Everything will run smoother for them and for you, and more quickly than it otherwise would if you just trust that you put it in, you got that denial back. If you received a denial by them, you're not supposed to refile unless they contact you and say that they need more information.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. And actually, I'm going to invite our board chair to join us, Milan Gandhi. Milan is a company in Southfield called MedShare. Actually has several companies. Milan has been sort of my advisor as we started this conversation and where SBAM was going to go. Milan, welcome. Let's just talk about your company first, or your companies. How are you dealing with this this coronavirus issue, and how have you been navigating?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, it's been a very interesting time for all of us. And when this first started, our businesses, and you're right, we do have multiple business entities that we operate within. We're in the healthcare business, and most of what we do is considered an essential healthcare service. People come to us for different forms of testing and diagnosis and treatment for things that just can't wait. And so while we don't treat COVID patients, and we are not in that line of work, the people who come to us right now, especially, they can't go to a hospital to get what they need, because the hospitals are only treating COVID patients as far as possible. So they're coming to us. With that being said, right from the beginning, we went about putting in place some pretty serious safety measures. And I would say that these could be used for anybody returning to work soon, a few weeks from now. Every surface was wiped down with a cleaning solution. We use 1 part bleach, 10 parts water, but you can use, there's a bunch of them, and the CDC guidelines kind of, can tell you what to use. We wipe every surface down at the beginning, middle, and end of the day. So 3 times a day. We have a UV light that we run in every room overnight that disinfects the room. And then we wipe every doorknob, countertop, and light switch every hour. So there's a person designated to do that. In addition to that, because we are dealing with patients, all of our employees are wearing latex gloves, surgical masks, and they're optional. They can wear eye protection. We have it available for them. They're just like science class goggles from high school. And then we have these non-sterile gowns, which are essentially like smocks that they wear, and that they leave in the office before they go, so they're not taking anything with them as far as possible, germ-wise. So these are the things we put in place early on and have worked for us. We have a knock on wood, we have a 0 infection rate amongst our staff and our customers, going on 3-4 weeks now. We also did limit our hours, so our business is definitely down. There's no question. We are way down in terms of how much business we're producing each day. So we cut our hours because we can handle the business with shorter hours, and that way we're reducing everybody's exposure. So we're down now to a 5-hour day. We went to 6 at one point and now down to 5. And that way everybody's only getting 5 hours exposure instead of 8. We are also staggering staff whenever possible. So there may be only overlapping by an hour a day, and that further reducing their exposure for people. Some people come in the morning, get the work done, some people in the afternoon, and everybody seems to be able to get it done in 5 hours a day. And then we are also taking certain employees who maybe don't have work right now and furloughing them. Now, we've chosen to do that all while bearing the entire responsibility financially. So we're paying everybody in full, no matter what hours they're working. We could lean on the unemployment system, and some are, and there's, we've just taken this route. And so what we've done is we've applied for a PPP loan. We have 4 entities under which we do payroll. So we applied for 4 PPP loans. Starting from 10 days ago or so, a little more than that, I've been reading and consuming everything I can on this loan program, and particularly the forgiveness part of it. The information seems to change daily. And sometimes what I read on Tuesday was contradicted by what I read on Wednesday, but I just kept reading and attending webinars. The best webinar I attended was the Dykema TCF Bank one, which was, was that 4 days ago, Monday, I believe. And, obviously they had the advantage of having the most updated information. It was one of the most recent ones, but really, really helpful. And I happen to be a TCF Bank customer, Chemical Bank, TCF Bank. So the information was really relevant, and we went ahead and applied right away. So I got all my applications in on Monday, and we are in the process now. Where are we in the process? Nobody knows. I think our banker said, oh yeah, you're on your way, you're fine, you're halfway through, but we don't really know what that means. And we certainly don't have a closing date yet. But I've heard some banks have stopped accepting applications. I would advise you, obviously your first choice is your bank, but outside of that, go to another bank. If your bank's not accepting applications, get in while you can, because certainly this first $350 billion will run out. And they may appropriate more, but I would get in now while you can.
All right, Millen, I also wanted to just give you a chance from, you chair the board of directors of the Small Business Association of Michigan. That's 25 business owners just like yourself. And the board has been just terrific at helping guide us through this whole thing. Your perspective from the chair of the board, what are our challenges and how are we doing?
Well, I mean, first of all, when all of this began a few weeks ago, Rob, you and I spoke about what can SBAM do to serve its members, not just the board members, but the members at large. And the first decision that you made and that I fully supported was taking the entire staff and focusing it on serving members during this time, particularly with information, resources, and support. So, we have a staff of people that sell memberships. Right now, they're focused on this. And to me, that's the right thing to do at the right time. And to me, SBAM has been a really valuable resource. I've actually turned on so many people to the daily briefing on Facebook Live, people who may not even be members, and they are all reporting back to me how great the information is and how helpful it is. But I think that what we can do and what SBAM has done is, in a way, the small business owners in Michigan, we're all in this together. And while there are large corporations that we all know of that are certainly suffering as a result of this, and you probably read more about that. 100,000 layoffs and all the losses projected. None of those companies are going out of business, and as a result of this, and they will all have down quarters and down years, and their profits will be down, and their stock prices will be down. But they are still going to be in business. And when you're a small business that runs a margin of $80,000 a year, this month off, this month of downtime could mean the difference between being in business and not, laying off your employees permanently and closing your doors and not. And so we all need to work together. We all need to offer resources together. I have freely shared information and little secrets and little tricks I've come up with to other small business owners. We're not in competition right now. We're in this together.
Yeah. Millen, that your voice is just so important in this whole thing. What you just said, the good news is there was a group of business owners, CEOs, and you sit at that table. You actually sit at the table with some very large company CEOs who are, in fact, advising the governor on how to, when and how to get back to work, get the economy started again. Can you give us any insight? And on behalf of the membership, I want to thank you for taking your time to do that. And maybe just how's it going?
Yeah, well, so it is an honor for both me and for SBAM to be at this table, and it's important that we're at this table. Basically, it is a council that has been convened. The council members are essentially the CEOs of the 12 or 14 largest corporations in Michigan. So it's all the names you know, it's the people you've heard of and read about, and then SBAM has a seat at this table, which is, to me, not only an honor, but it recognizes the importance of our members to the economy. And I've been, the one sort of designated to sit at that table. So we meet twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. It's about a 90-minute conference call. Of course, it's a conference call. It's not a meeting right now. And this is indefinitely. And I will say that the members of this council are actually attending. It truly is the CEOs of the largest corporations in Michigan attending this conference call, giving their feedback and input, and we are very organized about the way we are going about analyzing the economy and the jobs and how we are going to recommend to the governor to put people back to work, when, how, and with what restrictions and safety measures in place. Interestingly, Brian Calley published a paper a few weeks ago, or a week ago, that pretty much mirrors what this group is doing. I don't know if there was any communication between the two, but there's a group of McKinsey consultants working on this, and they've, these are like high-paid, very fancy consultants who have put together a very detailed plan and analysis of our economy by job classification, by industry, by geographic region, and by risk stratification. And it really follows the blueprint that Brian put out a week ago on behalf of SBAM. So pretty interesting to me, and sort of a tip of the cap to Brian on that. But it's just, it is so important that small businesses are represented. There is certainly a lot of value to the largest employers and corporations in Michigan giving their shared opinion of how and when to return the economy back to work to the governor. But without the input of small business, it's going to miss a lot, and it's going to not take into account the 800,000 or whatever number of small businesses we have here in Michigan and the millions of people we employ. So I'm very glad to be a part of that, and I'm glad SBAM has a seat at that table.
Well, and I'm glad you are there too. And it's been interesting. There are really two efforts going on. There's that council of businesses and some healthcare people as well. There's also the effort that Senator Shirkey talked about, the bipartisan group of senators that he's pulled together. And Brian, you have actually been you continue to be in the conversation there. So your concept paper that Millen just mentioned, which people should probably know you wrote at about 3 o'clock in the morning with your thumbs on your phone. It's pretty remarkable, but some great thinking about how we move through this thing and how we get out of it. just can you give us any insight that, so the two conversations, we have a foot in each of them. I think that's the important message, but how's that part of it going?
Well, I couldn't be more impressed with the approach that Senator Shirkey is taking, which is to bend over backward bipartisan, but then also to seek and internalize a wide range of input, but especially concerned about small business, and so that's why I think it's going to be an important factor in this, because people have a certain way of thinking about small business. And why I love the idea of Millen being at that table, that council that he talked about, was because everything from how he's running his business, how he's doing mitigation, how he did the scale back like you're supposed to, even if you're critical infrastructure, the way that he has been taking in all the information that he possibly can, looking at the tools, going to webinars, and then getting the most relevant, updated information, making the appropriate application. If I could sum it up, it would, for small business owners, be like Millen, right? Do the sorts of things that he has been doing, but then also, but that's a representation. He's showing to a group of the biggest CEOs of Michigan companies that are working on this economic restart, and showing them a picture of small business that is very different than what they have in their minds. And so I think it's going to go a long way of, so between one table where we're kind of, I'll say, primary invitees to the table, is kind of mostly thinking about small business. And then the other one, which is thinking kind of broadly across the board, all businesses, including Millen at that table, that I'm confident SBAM has a voice in it. But unfortunately, I think most of these things, it's going to be May 1st before we see substantial changes in terms of the opportunity to get out there and or get back to work.
Yeah. So we have been hearing, I think we literally can tell the difference in the feedback we're getting from our members since yesterday. And we can, we know and we feel and we agree that it's frustrating, and there's a drumbeat that's beginning to happen about we got to get this thing going again. We will next week, we'll begin some grassroots efforts. We're going to ask you as small business owners to get involved in some messaging, including with your lawmaker and the 6 senators and the governor, and we'll try to help you think through how the best way to do that and the best messaging. Over the weekend, we just kind of ask you to hold your fire. I know there are a lot of business owners who are ready to storm the castle. Let's not storm the castle yet. Let's get ourselves a little more organized. And next week we will begin some more targeted efforts to try to let our policymakers hear the voice of small business in a way that's constructive, but effective. And that really is going to be our aim here, is to counterbalance a voice that says zero risk. We're not going. Nobody comes out of their house until it's all safe, and we all know that really can't. The economy can't survive that. So hold your fire over the weekend, if you will. We're going to close this thing out. I'll just remind you of 2 webinars. Tuesday, we're doing a webinar. This one with the Michigan CPA Association, about spending and tracking your PPP if you've gotten the loan, or if you haven't yet, beginning to think about how you'll deploy it and how you'll track for it. That's Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Friday at 10 a.m. This is a new one. The tax implications of an EIDL or a PPP, or even the CARES Act, brought some new tax implications, including a loss carry forward and some other things that are going to be more liberalized in the tax code for businesses. And we're not expecting to make a tax expert of you, but to help you understand the implications of decisions you make today on taxes as you go forward. So both of those coming next week. We'll be back Monday with our 3 o'clock daily briefing. So I hope you'll join us then. In the meantime, remember to wash your hands.
And don't touch your face. Happy Easter, everybody.